Todd has been a friend of Wooddale Church for a long, long time, one of our go-to marriage and family therapists, and he has just been a wonderful counselor for us, and so many people here have just benefited by his ministry. And today he gets to talk about one of, I think, the best subjects for him to talk about, and that's 5 ways to bring out the best in your spouse. So I got a question for you. If you came with your spouse today, how many of you are hoping your spouse is taking notes today? Really close notes, all right? So, just by being here today, you're investing in your marriage, you're investing in each other, and if you're here and your spouse isn't here, well, your spouse ought to know just how blessed they are to have you here today doing this. So we have a ministry at Wooddale that has been happening since January that's called Re-Engage, and it is for any couple, whether you are at a spot in your marriage where you are like, hey, things are going really well, and we'd just love to see our marriage grow even deeper and just have some enrichment in our marriage, or you're at the spot where you're saying, hey, our marriage is in a crisis, and unless God intervenes, like, we are in trouble. And it's called Re-Engage. We talk about that being for couples who need to reconnect, reignite, or resurrect their marriage. And we are 1 week away from our first group of that kind of graduating or finishing the first time through Re-Engage. And I got to tell you, it's been amazing. I was talking to a couple in the parking lot on Tuesday night who said, we haven't been super open in the group, but when we came here, our marriage, we were convinced was over, and we were coming here to kind of just plan for the next chapter of our life. And our marriage has been completely resurrected and changed because of this time. And then I've had others who've just said, oh my goodness, I forgot some of the things that I just need to focus on a regular basis. The thing that's so great about Re-Engage is it allows you to be intentional about your marriage and to have those conversations that sometimes we get a little bit too lazy to have, or we just, we get so comfortable with each other that we stop having those conversations. And so I want to encourage you, our registration for the next session of Re-Engage, which starts in September, it'll be live by the end of the month on the Family Resource website, and we'd love to have you join us. We're going to have some who are going to go through it again because they've just kind of begun to wet the whistle on the relationship, and others who they are inviting friends to come and join them next time. So that happens right in this room Tuesday nights. Love to have you join us for Re-Engage in the fall. Secondly, our speaker, the first time he came, I found out some trivia about Todd, all right? And so I have this LP up here, this record. I just want you to hear. You guys know what a record is? It's this thing that is like a disc, and apparently you put this thing here, and you go like this. Sunfire like, from within. Sunfire from within, baby. Come on, let's sing it together. All right, this is Todd Mulliken, I found out, was in a band called Sunfire, and this is from what, 1980. The price tag on this album is $100 from the store that sold it to me on eBay. They didn't get $100. They took my best offer, kind of a buy it now type deal. And I asked Steve before, he's like, who's Sunfire? And I said, well, Steve, look at the back here. Look at this picture. I said, do you recognize this guy? And he goes, yeah, that's B.J. Thomas. I said, no. That's Todd Mulliken when he was younger, all right? So Todd, as a gift from Wooddale to you, you get this record when you're done today for your personal connection. I know you've lost it. Your daughters, I'm sure, need this copy and are going to want to celebrate Mother's Day with this playing in the background. If you need a record player, I'll give that to you, too, so that your kids can listen to this, and then I have an excuse to get a better one, all right? But there you go. So Sunfire, Todd Mulliken, the things you find out about speakers. You didn't come to hear about that, though. You came to talk about marriage. So, Todd, I'm going to give it over to you. Let's give Todd a hand. B.J. Thomas.
Well, I just had a trauma trigger. My word. That was 1980. Brian, are you sure they didn't, put it in your car after they, stole your, just to give it to you? We were trying to give those away back in the day, yeah. Oh, my word. So good. Hey, thanks for having me. Welcome. And it's always an honor just to be at Wooddale and to speak and to walk alongside folks as we're talking about marriage. So, there's a bunch of things we could have talked about today regarding marriage, but I thought I'd talk about just after 35 years of practice now, what are 5 general areas I'm seeing that would help spouses learn how to bring out the best in each other, right? If you're anything like me, being married 34 years now, actually 35. We just celebrated our Annie last Sunday. That was really cool. For our 40th, we're planning some big stuff, but last Sunday was our 35th, and it was really special. So it's easy to bring out the worst in each other, isn't it? Or it's easy to see kind of the most difficult parts of our spouse. It's easy to see the brokenness in their stories and to, if we're not careful, hold that against them, right? And so how do we try to reframe that narrative and, as a child of God, work on our own side of the street well and come towards our spouse with what we're for in the story and what we're for with transforming our relationship? And I think it gets really slippery and hard to do. So I've just seen 5 basic things that can help couples continue to grow together versus grow apart and to see the best of each other. Ready? All right. First one is learning how to accept our differences, right? Because very early on, we start to bump into differences that are natural for us. Romans 15:7 says, accept one another as Christ accepts us in order to bring praise to God. There's 3 general areas that I've bumped into the most when it comes to differences with couples. First one is the classic introvert versus extrovert dilemma. How many in this room believe in general you're more extroverted? So you're connecting, busy, more the better, that brings life to you. How many in the room feel like you're more introverted, more reflective, introspective, maybe 2 or 3 close friends, gain energy by reading for a couple of days, just kind of take it easy, right? So if we aren't aware of that difference, we can start to feel like our spouse is doing something to us, right? You'll hear that quite a bit. How do you think the extrovert views the introvert, by the way? They listen, that's good. But how do they view the introvert, do you think? Not engaging. Boring, right. That came out pretty quick. No, just kidding. Yeah, right. Anything else, how the extrovert sees the introvert? What's that? A challenge. I love that. Lack of joy, right? Is that all you got, right? Kind of thing, right? Isn't there more there? How does the introvert see the extrovert? Overbearing. What's that? Obnoxious. Wow. That came out quick, too. That was great. What do you got? Excessive. Great stuff, right? And so we can start kind of putting on our clinical cap and start internally diagnosing what's wrong with the other human, right? Like, or maybe God hasn't helped them in this area, and start to do right, and really start holding that against versus getting our 1 Corinthians 12 on, where we're each using our own gifts to do what? To edify the body that we have in Christ, right? To edify each other, learn how to see the other in their story. And because I'm an extrovert, my wife's an introvert. After the first year of marriage, it was clear in my mind she was a loser and had no friends, right? And it was clear to me or it was clear to her that I had untreated lots of stuff, right? And, there's a whole, including ADHD for sure, but really I was kind of shallow, right? I'd work the room and not really pay attention and not really encode the messages I was hearing. Does that make sense? And we really started to go wow, what's wrong with you? When really, it was just a difference that we had. And until we started to reframe that and say, I see you in your introversion, I see the beauty of you reading and reflecting and relaxing and being able to have a quiet time. My average quiet time is 5 minutes. Her average quiet time is 5 hours, right? And so, but how, she's not holding that against me. She knows I love Jesus and I want to, my connection typically is more in groups, and spiritual growth will be in a Bible study more. Does that make sense? So we started to reframe the narrative and started to see the other person and how God made them. So that's a big one. So how you doing with that one? Second one is, hang with me here, it's kind of what I call the tree versus the forest person. So when you're trying to gather information in from your spouse, You're hearing what they're saying. The tree person tends to hear what the person's saying literally and bring it in. They see the tree right here, but they don't see the forest out there. So I'm hearing you say, here's the 5 things on the grocery list. This is what I got. This is what I'm doing. I'm on my way to do that, and I'm good. I'm hearing you saying you're frustrated with what happened yesterday, and I hear you're frustrated. I got it. Okay, what's next? Right? So I see the tree. I see it coming in. I'm funneling it in. For those of you aware of the Myers-Briggs test, kind of an old school test, that's more the sensing person. They gather information and bring it in. The forest person, when they're hearing you talk, the forest person's going, I hear what you're saying, but I wonder if you meant that, or I wonder what else might be on your mind about that, or maybe we could explore some possibilities about that. I wonder. The forest person explores the possibilities, but doesn't see the tree right there. And so what can happen with that, and more often than not, without getting too stereotypical here, more often than not, the forest person may be female and the tree person may be male, right? I'm almost hearing some amens coming out from you folks. Now, once in a while, it's the other way around, right? We have the creative male type who's kind of floating different ideas and exploring possibilities, and the female is more like, kind of concrete and logical and connects this way. And sometimes we're the same, right? And that has different issues. So what do you think the tree person thinks when they're dialoguing with their forest person spouse? Any thoughts? They're not hearing me, right? Yeah, do we need to go over there too and go over there and be all over the place? Or can we just kind of stay on this, and can we land the plane? Can we land the plane? I mean, I was hoping this would take a couple minutes, and it's been a half an hour. Okay? Now, how about the other way around? How does the forest person see the tree person? Resistant? Rigid. Focused? Yeah, not open to other ideas, for sure. Not understanding what's going on. Yeah, incapable of going outside the box, right? And really, instead of saying we have a complementary gift mix here, let's use all 10 of these gifts, what we're very gifted at is learning how to change our spouse to become like ourselves, right? And the minute we start doing that, the best advice I can give us is to stop doing that. So how do we, reframe that and see the other and their strengths? And wait for it. And if you are a tree person and your forest person is going off, it doesn't mean they're not for you. It doesn't mean they're not listening to you. It doesn't mean they're doing something to you. And wait for it even more. If you're a forest person and you're with a tree person spouse and they're kind of here, it doesn't mean they're not for you. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It doesn't mean they're doing something to you. But boy, it feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Especially when we're different. Now, certainly sometimes those things are going on when we're in deep pain and we're really struggling, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that's the second one. So how do we get to reframe the narrative there and realize that's how my spouse is wired, and how do I accept that and actually use their gifts to edify our situation and have them drive that part of our story, and the tree person gets to drive certain parts of the story. So using the gifts to strengthen versus trying to change each other. The last one of that really keeps me in business is there's a starter versus a finisher. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So what we have there is the starter loves to start things, right? And they've got 3 or 4 projects going, yay. And yay, and let's do another one, yay. And this is really fun, and they're energized by the starting. Does that make sense? When they're starting something, that's when they feel just alive and excited and innovative and using the gifts God has given them to start something. The finisher will be the one, like, Richard, when you're done with the food, let me know for sure so I can clean the table right away. If I'm hosting Richard at my house, once he's done eating, I'll clean it up, move it over to the kitchen sink, clean it up because now we're done, right? The finisher likes to finish projects. Does that make sense? They are energized by closing the deal, work before play, and they want to just get things done. Because once it's done, they feel released. Does that make sense? So, what does the starter think about the finisher? Right? Can we just enjoy the moment here? Come on over here and let's snuggle on the couch. We'll get to that in the morning. Let's have a conversation. Hey, there's 3 great things that God is doing in our life now. 3 great projects. Why are you kind of clamping down my joy and wanting me to clean it up all the time? How does the finisher view the starter? No follow through, right? They leave it all over the place, right? They're not really thinking about me and how important it is and things are clean, right? They're not thinking about me, right? So it's easy to start a narrative against, right? So one other thing, I'll just be randomly throwing stuff out here. So the other thing is I have couples do all the time is like if I am assuming something about my spouse in that moment, like I'm assuming they're not thinking about me, I'm going to try to get clarification from them right there versus hold it against them and start a little mini resentment bank account. Okay, because usually I see couples that have a variety, a wide portfolio of little mini resentment accounts. Certain ones are gaining more interest than the others, and good luck to all of us when we do that, right? And so, so I'm going to clarify that. So clearly all these 3 are certainly stuff I deal with my wife, and she deals with me. So how do we reframe that narrative if we are different in that starter and finisher and know that we're for each other and see that? So if I'm a starter, I'm going to try to clean it up, not because I'm controlled by my spouse and they're running a boot camp, but rather because they're for me, and that just kind of energizes them. I'm not codependent on them. Not because I'm defined by how they react to me, but rather I'm for this. I'm for the fact God has made me as a starter, and I'm for kind of cleaning it up a little bit because I know it's important to my spouse. If I'm a finisher, how do I know they're not looking forward to, hey, I got another mess here, woohoo, I'm doing that to you, but rather, no, they're exploratory, they're starting things. That's how they're energized. So how do I not make sure like that's defining how I see that person now because they're doing that to me? How do I give grace to that and see the beauty of the start? Right? And so I just want to say that first area, that first key, kind of helps us stay transformative versus move to transactional. It helps us be more for each other versus starting to hold against. Okay? The second key is what's called 5 to 1, where we're giving each other 5 affirmations for every 1 criticism. Now, when I'm working with a pre-marriage couple, it's usually 100 to 0. Like, and it's really sweet. It's amazing. And I say, we'll see you in a year. I'm just kidding. But no, what's beautiful about it is there is like, well, any issues? No, not real, no. No. Okay, great. And part of that's beautiful because part of it is, they're really for each other and not holding against. They haven't gone through much hurt yet, typically, because the hurt mindset, when we get in there, when you and I get there, we hold against, we don't trust the intention. We even get mildly paranoid about what their intention is, and we're resentment bank building. So if I'm in a hurt mindset, I need to make sure I get in the car real quick with the Holy Spirit and run right to a forgiveness mindset, which isn't like some la-la land place. It's more like, hey, I see you, I'm for you, I'm hurt by what happened, I'm going to address that with you, but I'm going to release you from it. Because I'm called to do that 70 times 7. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is holding against, and then we're kind of not close together, we're kind of getting more apart. So think of forgiveness mindset, good boundaries, forgiving, believing the best, trusting the intention. Hurt mindset, not trusting the intention, holding against, mildly paranoid, starting to think about and assess what's happening to me all the time, which is a good idea to do as if we're in something that's really, really unsafe and really, really, really scary. For sure, do it then. If we're not, don't do it. 5 to 1 is not saying 5 nice things real quick and and then I've got my I've got my big one, right? It's more like a shift in just how I see. You know, Paul doesn't say, you know, think about whatever is difficult and hard and hold things against your spouse, right? What does he say there in Philippians 4? You know, at the end he says, hey, I've learned the secret in all things to be content, whether I'm in the plenty or what? Or the want. Right? Before that he says, think, you know, be anxious about nothing, by prayer and petition, you know, bring your prayers and petition to God, and he will help our minds, right, to have a different sense. And then the peace of Christ will always be with you there. And what he's talking about is think about whatever is true, noble, of excellence, of praise. So sometimes it's as relaxing as me leaving here and thinking about the 3 things I love about my spouse versus the 2 things that drive me crazy, right? Sometimes, and that will lead more to a 5 to 1. We want anybody in our home to not, we're not faking it and putting on a smile and going to church with a smile. We're going to church because we're broken and we need a Savior, right? But in that brokenness, we, in the home, are really trying to promote a language of love and affirmation. And we're looking for it. We're looking for the victories. We're looking for the highlight film. And we're talking about it. Even if we're really quiet and relaxed person, doesn't mean we're going to share our feelings for 5 hours. It just means like, hey, thanks for that. That was helpful. Or I really appreciated yesterday the way you talked with our adult kiddo. Thanks for that. So, and sometimes if you're anything like me, I have a nice thought about my wife of what she did yesterday. Oh, it's so cool. Yay. But I never tell her about that. I kind of feel better because I had a good feeling about my spouse, right? That was nice. That was good. But I maybe could just let her know that, right? So 5 to 1. Does that make sense? Think of that idea of not because we're keeping score, but because we get to do that. Because the alternative is what most marriages evolve into kind of is like we only talk about things if life is hard. That's the only time we're having a talk. And we need to have those talks. But we also want to have talks that are just highlight films. Just like, hey, that was amazing. That was good. Versus what we expect to be good. Now let's wrong only. So that's the second thing I've seen that's really helpful. The third is the hardest, which is how do we create a safe place as couples to have disagreements so that over time we're learning from our conflicts versus being defined by them. That's what I really help couples with a lot is how do we not be defined by our conflicts but learn from them so that we don't have emotional and spiritual hangovers for a couple of months based on our worst moment. But rather we're trying to create a posture together that we're for each other even in the conflict. And so just 2 thoughts about that. One would be is asking yourself under stress, what is your tendency? You know, what do you notice about yourself? Are you more of a fighter under stress, where you want to have decision? You are beautifully able to address hard things. You're wonderfully able to make the tough call. The truth of Christ shows through you when there's truth to be talked about. But your rough edges are needing to be right, always getting the last word, and then hurting with your words. Right? So if I'm a fighter, I get to have the Holy Spirit hold me in all the strengths of that and let him hold me in all the difficulties and to be comforted and to be advocated for, and to try to get at the root of what's causing some of that squishy stuff. Now, most of us in this area of the world tend to be more the flighter under stress. Doesn't mean all of us are. We may have more fighters in here than flighters, but flighters desire harmony. They desire, come let us reason together. They desire things to go well. More often than not, they'll be able to do James 1:19 a little bit better than the fighter, where they are quick to listen and slow to anger. Right? They're pretty good at that. What the fighter has to work on is not avoiding. The older I get, I'm really old, the older I get, the more I think avoidance of an issue is as difficult as addressing it in not a perfect way. The older I get, I think I see that. I think when I avoid the mess, I carry the mess, right? So flighters will avoid and deflect and minimize and, just shut down and freeze or sometimes fawn over their spouse. And their biggest struggle is something that happened 12 years ago on a Tuesday. I'm still holding that against, right? Because I haven't addressed it, and that resentment bank we talked about is pretty chock full. And sometimes they're the ones at halftime in life that go, I'm just overwhelmed, right? Because they've been avoiding messes. So ask yourself, first of all, when it comes to conflict, I'm going to do my best to bring my best self in Jesus to those heart spaces, right? And if I'm a fighter, I'm going to do my best to wait for it. The one thing the fighter can do that would put me out of business for sure is after they're done talking, say, but what do you think, honey? Right? Fighters need to create invitations more to the other. And then flighters need to stay in there more and know that we're okay, we're just having a disagreement, and I may even be triggered by some stuff, and I can even talk about that, but I'm going to stay in there because I'm for you, and we're trying to figure this out and see if we can figure it out. And if we can't, we'll take a time out and reconvene. So that's the first thing, is be in prayer about what your style is in conflict. Now, sometimes we have two fighters together, and boy, that's interesting, right? And that's really, it's like, wow, here we go, buckle up. But usually, they go to the top of Anger Mountain real quick, and then usually they're good, whoa, okay, right? And once in a while you have two flighters together. Now I never see them because they can't make a decision to come to counseling, right? So hey, what do you want to do today? Well, I don't know, what do you want to do? It doesn't really matter, whatever you want's fine, that's good, no, really, right? So oftentimes we have one of each, if that makes sense, on the continuum. So maybe be asking yourself, which style am I? The second thing that can help us place is really 4 quick ideas. The first is speak without offending. So when I'm leading out, I'm going to lead out with, hey, here's my take on what happened yesterday, hon, what do you see? So I'm going to lead it out not because I'm afraid or pressured to do it perfect. I'm just going to lead out in a way that's like, here's my take on what happened, what do you think? Because we're for each other, we're in it together versus, I know how they're going to react anyway, so it doesn't matter what I say, or, I know they're just going to shut down, so I'm not going to bring it up. I'm going to invite the other person in, and because I'm for them. So speak without offending. And then the second one's harder, listen without defending. That's really slippery and tough. Listen without defending is meaning when I'm listening, all I'm trying to do is understand what my spouse is saying. I'm trying to, you've heard the word before, validate, right? Validate doesn't mean acquiesce. It doesn't mean I agree with everything. I'm just trying to understand what they're saying and trying to have empathy for what they're experiencing. So I have found in general, if the couple can do those first 2 volleys pretty well, that can really help set the stage to talk about the parenting issue, the intimacy issue, the money issue, the COVID issue, the in-laws issues, whatever the issues are, we're going to at least try to talk about in a way where it's come, let us reason together versus I need to be right or I need to be liked. The third thing is sometimes we have to be okay as a couple with agreeing to disagree. Not every 5 minutes, right? But at the end of the day, my wife and I still agree about how to spend money sometimes or on how we parent our adulting daughters and their spouses, right? How do we might not always agree, but we're still for each other. In fact, let's let's get beyond the fact that we're disagreeing, active taking, and trying to see that our might have a different perspective, and how do we figure that out, and maybe not even see eye to eye on that, but we're still for each other. God's still on the throne. Let's go. There's 85 things we agree with, 3 we don't. We're not going to be in denial of the 3. I just don't want to be defined by the 3, right? But we're going to spend as much time with 85 in our minds as we are, not because we're in denial, but because it's hard and we want to address it, but we don't want to be defined by it. So that's the third thing. That's interesting, right? But we know that conflicts are okay. The older I get, even being in the Midwest my whole life, the more I see that conflicts aren't bad, okay? They can be hard and hurt people, but let's do our intentions together in Christ to disagree well. And boy, we need that in this world more than anything else right now, almost, right? We need to be able to show Jesus by getting into tough spaces, having difficult conversations with people that see things very differently than us, and really trying to know that that person feels heard, even if we don't agree. And we need to first start in our homes to do that well. The fourth is, how do we spend our time? Right? And so I have, in one of my books, I have what's called the 3 tiers of time. Now, this is different for different couples and different seasons, but the idea here is that in our non-work time, how are we doing marriage time as the top thing? How are we running towards daily sharing, know when your next date is, know when your next getaway is? Even if your next getaway isn't for 6 months, I just know when it is, yay. Because when I'm ready to just feel over my spouse, because I'm so tired of what's going on, I know that we are getting away in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and I know we are dating a week from Friday, so we better get our act together because we're going out a week from Friday. So if I don't have the buoys out there, then I can get stuck longer, right? So marriage time will matter more than family time. Marriage time will matter more than time with our child or adolescent or young adult. Doesn't mean we avoid them or neglect them, and we won't. But we're showing them that marriage time matters, right? So we get to do that. We get to plan for that. We get to do that. The second tier is family time. That means different things in different seasons. If we have children, it means that we're having traditions and we're having discussions as they get older, and we're looking for one-on-one time with them. Then the last part is individual time, which I think can be really interesting, how I've seen that be an issue. And people that hunt and people that fish tend to keep me in business, even though I love to fish myself. But it's kind of interesting when I got a young couple and the dude's, a hunter, and, he's gone 6 weekends a year. Yeah, cool, great. And he goes, wow, you think it's okay? Let's keep seeing this guy. I like this marriage counselor, right? And the wife's going whatever, okay. And then I just tell him, hey, make sure that you are, not because we're keeping score, but of course, if you're going to be gone 6 weekends out of the year, which is great, you get to do that. That's your individual time. You love that. It re-energizes you. You come back, you come back at rest and at peace, and you love that. It's great. Just make sure you got at least 7 or 8 weekends a year that you're pursuing your wife and taking her on a weekend or going somewhere. And, just not because we're keeping score, but that really matters, right? So individual time for either person is meant to recharge them so they come back to the marriage feeling full, feeling good. And we're for that with each other. And what brings you life, honey? Go do that. What brings you life, honey? Go do that. So I've found that when marriage time is huge and they do it well, and that they regulate the family time well, whatever the family time issue is, it's really huge. And then that individual time can be a game changer. So the last area is something that includes, I brought a bunch of books to give away. The last area that I talk about with ways to come close to each other is just an observation I made about 15 years ago, that in general, I think there's certain things that will bring out the best in my wife if I'm a man, and there's certain things that will bring out the best in my husband if I'm a woman. Just things to think about, see if they fit for your story as a couple or not. The first one is probably something like, I would say clearly my own story, clearly at least 70 to 80, if I'm not dealing with like the big ticket item of untreated mental illness or infidelity or some type of abuse and trauma situation, if I'm dealing with kind of the basic marriage stuff where the biggest issues are, and it could be trauma related, are conflicts and just how weighty they can be and a lack of forgiveness and not really seeing each other and all of that. This is what I've noticed can really help a lot. The first is for the man. The man has 5 P's to work on. And the first P is to learn how to pursue his wife emotionally and spiritually. In general, for most of us fellas, we're great at dating. We're thinking about them a lot. I got a couple of speeding tickets when I was dating, even after winning, not after doing this here, this Sunfire thing. I can't believe you did that, Brian, by the way. But rather the whole, I was coming back from a broomball tournament. We won state. We were all excited. I love you guys, but I'm out because I can't wait to see my fiance. I drove like a bat out of you-know-what, got a speeding ticket, but I couldn't wait to see her. That make sense? So 34 years later, if I get a speeding ticket, it's probably for a different reason, but I know I'm at my best when I just can't wait to see her. Right? I know I'm at my best when I'm playing offense, when I am choosing her, cherishing her, noticing her. And I don't know that I need to read a book by anybody that says, here's how you pursue your wife. Well, I didn't need to read a book when I was dating her. Right? I didn't. Doesn't mean I shouldn't read a book now. I get to. But also it means like I need to make sure if I'm a man that I'm just thinking about her more, right? Because in general, I know, Brian, maybe you can rebuke me if I'm going wrong with this passage, but one of the things I take away from Genesis, when the curse comes on, he says to Adam, hey, to dust you are, to dust you shall return. You'll be toiling after selfish gain your whole life. And one of the things I've noticed about that still in 2023 is I, as a man, am too defined by, am I a good counselor, am I a good professor? Versus my wife doesn't care what I do. She just wants to know that, we're for each other, right? But I still think sometimes, I think females are better at this than males. We still are too defined by what we do, and then we don't give space for who she is and how am I noticing her today. So the guy gets to be on the pursuit. Because most guys are playing defense in marriage. Just tell me what to do. What did I do wrong today? It seems like she's in a good mood, so we're good. Right? So most guys play defense, which isn't like the worst thing in the world. So please don't hear judginess from me. But just know when you're playing offense, it's more fun. You notice her more. She senses that, oh, yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah. And then you won't, in my opinion, have to worry about exactly how to do it perfectly as much because, because most women feel like, here's the woman's dilemma. Hey, if I don't say anything, nothing happens. And if I say stuff, I'm a nag. Okay, great. Right, that's the woman's dilemma in general. Right, so as men, how are we doing with doing that first P in the book, pursuing, playing offense versus playing defense? Play offense, notice, pursue, choose, cherish. Where did she go? I'm going to go find her. Where'd she go? The woman has 5 A's to work on. And the first A is called acceptance. So one of the things I've seen the most in women is they don't look at who their husband is. They look at who he isn't yet, right? And they compare. They compare with Hallmark. Just kidding. They compare somewhere, right? And they kind of go, oh, why can't he be like that? Or why is he just like that? Or why hasn't he figured out that? Does that make sense? And that, in general, is only a good idea if there's an unacceptable going on in the marriage. We're not talking about accept unacceptables, right? But we're talking about, am I spending as much time on who he is, not because he's a narcissist and I have to glamorize him, but because his need to be admired or acknowledged is really deep, deep down in there. And how am I accepting what he does do well and noticing that more? That's the biggest thing I've seen with couples, is that issue right there. The lack of pursuit and the lack of acceptance. So we got 4 minutes left. Should I have you read the rest of those on your own? Because I've got 20 books I'm giving away. What do you want me to do, Dr. Brian?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And let's have some Q&A. I want to let people know. So the book that Todd brought, and this was totally unexpected. He said, I'm giving these away. I'm going to take this for the people online. But Todd brought this book, All the Best for Couples, 5 Ways to Bring Out the Best in Your Spouse. That's kind of the title of today's seminar. And so he's given you some like bonus material here at the beginning. I know, just kind of sitting here with my wife, just lots of questions kind of coming up, and I'm sure there are some of you that have those as well. So this is gonna take care of those other 4 P's and A's, and it's really, really good. So 1 per couple should cover the couples that are here. Make sure you grab one of these on your way out. And but we want to open it up for questions. Kathy has a microphone back here, and so just because we've got people who are listening online, we just want you to speak in that mic so that we can, they can hear as well. But what questions do you have about what you've heard today? Observations. It's always hard to be the first one, so somebody raise your hand and we'll get to you. Todd, we have a bunch of master husbands and wives here.
Well, the introverts are taking time.
They are.
Process. They're reflecting.
Yep. Anybody? Questions? All right, then I got a question for you, Todd. What's the second P?
Okay. The second P is for the guy to be a good planner. So he is, because a lot of times women feel like they got a bunch of abbreviations after the name. They're the cruise director, they're the social worker, they're the planner, they're doing everything. It's sometimes how some women feel. And so I think when the guy can kind of initiate, I often work with men on initiate versus respond. Initiate more. Doesn't mean you're controlling, over-managing, but you're just bringing up stuff. Like, so plan dates, plan times together. I have most couples do what I call a Sunday summit, where they get together on Sunday and just look at their day, their week, their month, and it can be a little businessy-like, but it also sets you up to have to go. I heard it was supposed to rain. What do you think? And we're going. We're going tomorrow night. So, just kind of, but she was thinking about, so instead of just kind of like, I don't think I'm, just sometimes you've ever noticed with your spouse, like if you're doing great, or if they're doing great and you're not doing great, I don't want to join them there. No, I don't want to join them there.
Yeah.
Versus like, let me join them there. And let's go, right? Yeah, but yesterday you weren't. Right? And I don't think Satan's under every rock, but I don't think he wants us to join them there, because I got material against you from what you did last week that we still haven't figured out perfectly. So you're in a good mood, and we want to. I don't know. So the second P for the guys to be a good planner, right? Initiate planning ideas. We've got 4 trips planned up over the next year. Because I'm a J in the Myers-Briggs, so I love to plan. And my wife loves that. And so that's a rhythm we've created that helps. The second A for the woman kind of sounds like the first A, and that is affirming what he does do well. And remember, I'm sorry to speak to the narcissism word, but unfortunately, most of the times people are telling me that their uncle, their wife, their mother-in-law, their father-in-law is a covert narcissist. I said, well, they might be. But that's 5% of the population, 6%-ish maybe, or they might be Swedish, okay? They might just be shut down, right? So it's not always that, and especially for the person who's been through trauma themselves, sometimes they do believe they're with a narcissist, and sometimes there are narcissists and they need to be treated, and we can talk about that in another session, because it's a horrible illness and hard to treat, and it's real. But so for the woman, because the 4th symptom of narcissistic personality disorder is an excessive need to be admired, right? So we're not talking about that. We're just talking about when good things happen, say it. It's kind of that 5-to-1 thing, right? So the second thing that really helps men, that men talk about a lot, is just knowing thanks. Thanks for the affirmation. Like I was kind of beating myself up pretty good on that, or I didn't even know I was beating myself up, but that landed well. Thanks, sweetie. Right? So the second A for the woman is affirmation, or for the woman to work on is affirmations.
That was such an amazing question. Anybody want to ask another question, like what the third P is? Excellent. So the third question is, what's the third P?
Okay, I'm not going to ask what the third P is, but I do want to know.
You're more creative than that, right?
Right, there you go. So looking at this list, all these things sound so great. And I think if we tried and could do them all, we'd probably have great marriages. But it's kind of an overwhelming list. If I had to start somewhere, and I can only choose one thing from the things you've said today, where should I start working on that one thing?
Wow. Well, preach. Love it. Preach. So good. Woo!
All right, I'm taking notes.
Hey, you're holding the mic. Where's your notepad? Yeah. That's a good word, Cindy. Can I give you a sixth thing to work on? I think overall, what I find myself saying quite a bit lately, it was even on the last Faith Radio I did a couple months ago, like, is mindset matters, right? So if my mindset towards my wife is kind of like, I know we went to church together, but, she's got some stuff, right? And, I don't, we had a good year, but I don't. If my mindset is kind of like, I got my Pharisee robe on, I got my, my clinical robe on, I've read some material on, borderline personality disorder, and I think she's got 3 of those traits for sure. So, right? And I'm not dismissing any of those diagnoses. They're all critical and important. But sometimes, I've got a lot of humans that are diagnosing their spouses now. And it's not a good look, myself included, right? So when my mindset is one of like, I'm for you, I love you, I'm willing to have hard conversations with you, but wait for it, I even see your story, sweetheart, and where you've been and who you are. When my mindset is there, Cindy, I think then all those 5 come a little more naturally. That's my first answer. Does that make sense? The second answer would be, I think this is really a psychological term, and my students kind of roll their eyes whenever I say it. It depends, right? I think maybe each couple here could answer that differently, right? So the reason why all 5 are there is those are the 5 things I've generally seen. So maybe ask yourself, which of those am I kind of walking with a limp with a little bit? Like which one is kind of like, let's celebrate the one that's going great. Like, hey, I think we got that, and good. Celebrate that. Don't like, oh my gosh, we don't have that. Celebrate what we got. But then say, Lord, hold me in this. Holy Spirit, you be my only real wise counselor, comforter, spirit of truth. Lean in and work with me on my side of the street of what I can do differently with that 5 to 1, with accepting the differences. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Is this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah. We gotcha.
So while you're working with the differences between, say, a starter and a finisher, and you go to the starter and you say, I recognize this in you, but the starter doesn't recognize it in him, I'd more of a down, let's talk about the differences.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. And we can use that for any of the 5 areas, right? Like, how do we address something that we do see in our spouse that we're concerned about? Because this is not meant to be like, hey, let's just, be naive, right? But what we're doing is saying we're generally not holding things against. So I get to address stuff like, and you've heard me, one of the things I say a lot is let each other in versus take things out on each other. Someone lets you in, hon, about what I saw yesterday, but help me with that, and I know I got my own stuff. I'm not trying to tap dance around and be a codependent, but I'm just trying to be powerful in Jesus and say, I notice this is what I sense, what do you think? And we know as a couple we get to do that, and we get to not take that personally when our spouse is noticing something. But I think to your kind of point, if I'm generally doing that 100 times a day, then I got an issue, right? If I'm not doing that, I need to do that, right? That 5 to 1 kind of spirit. So the 1 might be something I'm noticing that I'm concerned about, or that I'm wrestling with. How do you see it, sweetie? And they might shut down initially, but my boundary about honest conversations are table setters for further conversations. Because the first one might not be, oh, we've just lit a match or lit a candle in the Holy Spirit and we got Acts 2. I mean, whoo, we're all good and now no. It might be really hard. But God still holds us in that.
It's great. Marcy, you had your hand up.
So how important or not important is it to, when you're having a conflict, and if you've been married a long time, you know the other person pretty well, but to try to figure out what caused, what triggered that frustration in him or that disappointment, or her, versus kind of thinking about, let's see, what did he do today, what was going on in his day, or even going back to how they grew up, and that's how they usually respond, and how important is it to kind of keep that in mind?
Yeah, I think it's as important for me with my wife to see her story than it is for me to figure her out. Okay? And doesn't mean I'm not going to spend time with her on her story, but we're going to talk about that. Not because we're going to, in an hour on Sunday, we're going to talk about each other's family of origins, ready to go. But it's kind of like we are going to, we know as a couple we have that bandwidth. We've decided as a couple that's something we will do occasionally because we trust each other with it, right? So we know ahead of time we can go there sometimes. So I do think it's good to go there. I do think it's good. My gold standard in marriage is when I am letting my spouse in about what I see God doing in me that's made me really squishy with you yesterday and hurtful. And I'm noticing that about myself, and I think this is where it came from, not because I'm in analysis 24/7, but because I get to bring that to my spouse, my own vulnerability, and that's the gold standard, right? Is both people are looking in their own mirror and bringing up stuff that they notice about themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The next standard is, yes, I wonder where that came from, sweetie. I see that in you. It's hard for me. What do you think? Can we talk about it? And to your great point, Marcy, it's not going to be in that moment when things are when everybody's in kind of a hurt mindset. And real quick in conflict, when I'm in a conflict, you guys are in a conflict with each other, in that moment, neither one of you will be able to be everything to each other. Always know that, right? Because both people are a little bit hurt right there, right? And so the fight or flight is kind of operating a little bit, and we need to both take our own showers emotionally and spiritually and just know that we're for each other, and we'll maybe readdress that when we got a little bit better connection. Thanks for a great question, because it's good to know where we've come from, because generational patterns matter, right? And we're for changing those.
All right, well, Todd, I'm gonna ask you one more general question just for the group. And so one of the things we do at Lunch and Learns is we bring in a lot of marriage and family therapists, counselors, and part of the reason for that is when we founded this thing, we wanted to help expedite access to resources that can bring help. And it can take a while to get into a counselor today. We know that. There's a shortage of great counselors. And so being able to bring people like Todd here, I think is a real gift. And I so appreciate your time. And, I feel like we've been in a counseling session with you. About half the group here, my guess would be, have been to a counselor before. And there's probably another half of the group here who have said, I'd never do that. I don't know what that's like. My background tells me I shouldn't do that. And so I want you to maybe just kind of dispel the myth or help take away some of the mystery for the person who's never been to counseling. So if there was a couple here who said, we want to begin couples therapy, come in for couples counseling, can you just, every couple's different, but this is what that's like for a couple.
And let me know if this helps, and Brian, share your perspective too, please. But I think what I've been saying quite a bit lately is, in order for us to really destigmatize going to a counselor for mental health or emotional health or marital health issues, we need to realize that a lot of these things are just like physical health issues, right? Things that it is no different. And so how do we know? The best way we can destigmatize is to know we're for getting help and getting better. And I don't know how this sounds to you folks, but a lot of people that have seen me, I'm grocery shopping. Hey, how you doing? Good. How are you? Let's have a conversation. Nobody, I can't talk to my counselor or something. Like, oh my gosh, what do people think? Like, what? It makes sense. It's almost like giving power to something that isn't True, because we're all broken. So I would say as a couple, like, make sure you get a referral from either a friend who had a good experience with that counselor, or from, Wooddale's staff. They have a great list. Because sometimes counseling doesn't go well, right? And sometimes it's the fit. In order for therapy to be effective, the counselor needs to know what she or he is doing in that area. The clients need to be able to participate. And the third is the alliance between the therapist and the clients. So please know, like, you are in good company if you start the process, and know that it's something that really benefits your marital health, just like your physical health. It really is no different. And the more we understand that, I think the easier it is to realize, like, this can be helpful, and we're for it, and it gives us tools to do, because most of it is stress related, and it just gives us tools to help us manage our stress better, and that's a gift.
It's huge. Thank you. I think there was a day and age when churches even used to perpetuate the myth that you don't go see a counselor, that Jesus should be enough. And I would say probably 80% of the pastors I know today go to counseling on a regular basis. We can't deal with the stuff that we see all the time without having somebody that we can talk to, okay? So as we take that stigma away, Todd is my counselor. I love this guy, but I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid to seek that out, and we've got a great summer of Lunch and Learn. So on your table is our brand new Lunch and Learn schedule for the summer. You can give Todd a hand. Thank you, Todd, for coming today. And if you liked him, on June 8th, he'll be back, and he's going to be talking about managing anxiety in yourself and your kids. We know that anxiety is through the roof right now in our culture, and many of us here would say, yep, we struggle with that one too. And so how do I help in a world right now where kids are dealing with anxiety at higher levels than we've ever seen? If you're struggling with that as a parent and your children are struggling, how do you manage that for both of you? And so I'm really excited about you coming to speak about that. Next week, we have one of these unusual Lunch and Learns where it's not really about mental health or marriage. It's a leadership deal. If you have people in your life who work for any kind of organization, whether it's a business, a school, a church, a hospital, innovation is part of just the lifeblood of any organization. And next week, we are thrilled to have with us Randy Darcy, who was the Chief Innovation Officer at General Mills for a number of years. And he's going to be talking about continuous innovation, the successful lifeblood of any organization. And I'm so excited about this. Many of you know I'm also a real estate agent. I'm inviting like 30 of my friends from that part of my life to come next week. This is really a great bridge building opportunity. They're going to love it. Randy had the opportunity. General Mills said, find the most innovative organizations in the world and see what you can learn from them. And so he went to the Navy SEALs and the Blue Angels, to Disney and Pixar and Apple, and learned all sorts of things about innovation. His presentation next week is going to be entertaining. It's going to be very much multimedia, and it's going to be educational. And it would be a great thing to invite maybe a young business leader to come with you, or somebody that you work with at the office. And I want to encourage you to be here next week. June 1st, our summer series begins with Pastor Ryan Tarman. Ryan is our 5th and 6th grade pastor here at Wooddale Church, and he's going to just be talking about 5 creative ways this summer that you can help your child grow spiritually. And I want to put the emphasis on creative there. And I cannot wait for you to get to hear from Ryan. And he's one of the most innovative leaders that I know when it comes to working with young adolescent children. And so I want to make sure you know about that. June 15th, there's no Lunch and Learn that week. We've got a big event happening that uses all the rooms here at Wooddale that week called Camp Woods Kids. But the next week, we'll have our next most unusual deal at the Lunch and Learn, and that is Introduction to Pickleball. So Charlie and Denise Osland are a couple who are early empty nesters who have fallen in love with this game, but they want to use it missionally. And so they're going to come here, and you're actually going to start the Lunch and Learn here that day. We're going to have a little instruction on the television that they do with all of their classes, and then we're going out to the pickleball courts, okay? Pickleball is a great sport. For those of you who maybe have not been like doing a lot of exercise lately, you can do pickleball. And for those of you who want to be incredible experts, you can do that. We actually have later on this summer the national champion for pickleball for the senior unit that's going to be coming here and doing a camp. Dean Stinchfield's going to be leading that, and we may be doing an outreach, and that'll be the same week as Camp Woods Kids. So the week that we don't have the Lunch and Learn, the week before, we're going to be doing a really cool thing here for pickleball. And then on June 29th, this was a request from all of you, and so we gave you a chance to tell us what you'd like. And one of our moms said, hey, we've got a daughter who's starting college, and I'm freaking out because we haven't done the job I wanted to do when it came to getting her ready to be on her own financially. So what are the basics of personal finance for students? And we're bringing Steve Woodley in. Steve is one of the best financial planners that I know, and he's not selling his services. He's a member of Wooddale. He leads our Financial Peace University. He will not be advertising for that. He's going to be coming and giving you great principles, and I love that he put in parentheses and their parents. All right, so some of you are going to be going, I want my kids to come to this because I really need it myself too. And so come on June 29th, and then there's a lot happening in July and August as well. That's on your cards in there. Thanks for showing up. Before you leave, make sure you pick up the book. And one more time, Todd, thank you so much. This was so practical today. Thank you.